I think so far this season, the Memphis Grizzlies have easily been one of the more fascinating teams in all of the NBA. When I look at the Memphis Grizzlies from top to bottom, there's so many things that stick out to me about this team. And the first thing I want to give a lot of credit to, or the first people I want to give a lot of credit to, is the front office of the Memphis Grizzlies and also Coach Taylor Jenkins, because I want to look to last year. Last year was a very tough year for the Memphis Grizzlies. A lot of adversity and a lot of turmoil. Their best player, Ja Morant, we all know that he was faced with a 25-game suspension to start last season, and then just playing 9 games after serving his suspension, he suffers a season-ending injury. So they're without Ja Morant for a majority of the year, and he is not just one of the best players, or not just the best player on the Memphis Grizzlies, but I wholeheartedly agree that Ja Morant is one of the best players in all of the NBA, because I love the impact that he has on the offensive side of the ball. I think he has one of the more, and this is something that comes with being super athletic. A lot of people don't realize just how skilled and how good you are at the game of basketball, but Ja Morant is one of those guys that can really take over, control, and dominate a basketball game. So that's something that you want to have when it's time for playoff basketball, and I think Ja Morant definitely has that type of impact inside of him. So they were without that type of player for majority of the year, and the injuries just didn't stop there. Marcus Smart missed a lot of time. Desmond Bane also missed a lot of time. Jaren Jackson only played 60-something games that season. So it was a lot going on for the Memphis Grizzlies last year, but I think they were able to take this curse and turn it into a blessing and turn it into an opportunity, because it gave a bunch of other players on the teams to showcase their talent. It gave them opportunity to show how good and impactful they can be as well. And this is where the credit comes into Coach Taylor Jenkins, because I think he's done a great job of taking the momentum that those role players were able to ramp up last season. He was able to take that momentum and bring it into this season, factoring in everyone: Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, and then those role players that we saw play really well with the Memphis Grizzlies, key players being out. And now he's created this new offensive system, this new rotation that involves a lot of guys, and it's really been working for the Memphis Grizzlies. Because when you hear these team stats I'm about to name for the Memphis Grizzlies, they've really been dominating, and it really just goes back to that word fascinating. Because okay, let's start with their team stats as a whole. Right now, the Memphis Grizzlies, they have a record of 18-8, and they're sitting at second place in the Western Conference. Them and the Houston Rockets, they keep going back and forth for that second place spot. And then they're also, the team that they're behind are the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they're second place in the Western Conference. They've won 9 out of their last 10 games. They're on a 4-game winning streak. It could definitely be an even higher winning streak as of right now, but they had some unfortunate things happen in one of their games. But nonetheless, they're still winning as of late. They're winning a lot more than they're losing. And then this is where it gets really, really interesting with the Memphis Grizzlies. We look at their basketball stats, offensive and defensive rating. They're top 6 in both offensive and defensive rating, number 6 in the NBA when it comes to defensive rating, and then 5 in the NBA when it comes to offensive rating. But when it comes to total points per game, nobody is averaging more points per game than the Memphis Grizzlies, as they sit at number 1 in that category. They're also the fastest team in all of the NBA. They love to get up and down, use their athleticism to their ability. If they get a rebound, they're pushing tempo. If they get scored on, they're pushing tempo. If they get a steal, they're pushing tempo. They love to get up and down. And this next stat, it goes, once again, gives a lot of credit to Coach Taylor Jenkins and credit to the players, of course, because they're the ones executing it. But when it comes to assists per game, the Memphis Grizzlies, they average 30 assists per game, which is good enough for number 2 in the NBA. So they love moving the ball, they love sharing the ball, and that just goes into how much they're trusting the role players on this team to not only make plays but also score the basketball. So I think that's big time for the Memphis Grizzlies. And then the last major stat I want to look at that I think is very underestimated in today's NBA, but rebounding. They're averaging 47 rebounds per game, which is good enough for third place in the NBA. So we look at the Memphis Grizzlies statistically from a team standpoint, they've been nothing short of spectacular, nothing short of impressive. They're top 5, top 6 in all of these categories, leading the NBA in some of these categories. And where that word fascinating comes into play for me when it comes to these statistics is when I look at the player stats. And I wouldn't say that the Memphis Grizzlies are I wouldn't say that they're dealing with a huge injury bug right now, but there's a little injury bug lingering around. We've seen Ja Morant, he's had to miss a couple of games so far this season. Desmond Bane has had to miss a couple of games so far this season. Marcus Smart has been banged up a couple games so far this season, but it hasn't impacted the Memphis Grizzlies like it did last year. Like we said, right now they're still sitting at second place in the Western Conference, and that has to and when that happens, like we said, it just goes into the depth. Guys stepping up when these guys are out. Scottie Pippen Jr. stepping up. Jalen Wells, the rookie, has been big time so far this season. Santi Aldama, who's becoming one of my favorite players, he steps up big time when guys go down. So the Memphis Grizzlies, they've been able to, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a weakness. If you have injured guys and they're out, there's not really nothing you can do about that. But the front office have been able to pick the right players, and Coach Taylor Jenkins has been able to implement the correct game plan so his team can be ready in case we have an emergency like an injury. So I've really been loving that about the Memphis Grizzlies. And then another thing, and I don't want to forget these other guys that's been dealing with injuries as well, because they are good basketball players too. Zach Edey has been out for a long time, it feels like, for the Memphis Grizzlies. Gigi Jackson has been out for a long time, and also Vince Williams has been out for a long time for the Memphis Grizzlies. So a lot of quality players have missed some quality times, but Coach Taylor Jenkins, he's been able to prepare his guys to be able to survive these little windstorms that's been coming the Memphis Grizzlies' way. So I've been really impressed with that. And then also another thing, now you look at the Memphis Grizzlies and you look at individual stats and you go look at minutes per game, and this is something that really sticks out to me. I talked about this in my last Memphis Grizzlies video, and it's still the case today. But right now, the Memphis Grizzlies, they don't have a single player playing over 28 minutes per game right now. And the two players that are touching at least 28 minutes per game are Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant. So I think this is like very impressive, because if we look at some of the other best teams in the Eastern and the Western Conference, they have to play their best players. For them to win games, they have to play their best players at least 34, 35 minutes per game. So once again, I just think that speaks to the depth, and it speaks to the volumes of how deep this Memphis Grizzlies team is. And I think as the season goes on, I think when we look at guys like Desmond Bane, we look at guys like Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., I definitely think their minutes are going to start to rise to get them ready to go on those go into their playoff run, where they're going to have to play deeper stretches and they're going to have to play longer into the ball game. But it's a good situation for them to be able to wait towards the middle of the season and the end of the season to have to do that, because right now Coach Taylor Jenkins, he kind of has their minutes on cruise control right now. And I definitely understand guys coming off from injury like Ja Morant, he didn't play too much basketball last year, so you definitely want to be cautious with his minutes towards the beginning of the year. But we're now seeing it starting to ramp up. It started off with like 25 minutes per game, now it's getting up to like 27, 28. So and that's another thing, like Ja Morant, people don't understand how good Ja Morant is. And I believe we said this earlier in the intro, but when you're as athletic as Ja Morant, and people see you jumping over people to dunk on them, and they see all these crazy dunks, and I feel like this has happened with players like Blake Griffin as well, but you just don't see how talented these guys are. And I think Ja Morant, he's one of the more talented players in the NBA aside from his athleticism. The athleticism is just what makes it so unfair, but his skill set is insane. His ability to pass the basketball, his ability to read the floor. And I think Ja Morant, while I'm such a huge fan of him, I think he has something that's so unstoppable. And I think if you want to be successful in the playoffs, you got to have an unstoppable move. And I think Ja Morant, whenever he gets into the paint and he throws up that little floater, I don't think I've seen him miss that too many times. And that's not something that you can really get. You can't really take somebody out out of a rhythm when they're doing that, because that's really like a layup. It's really like, it's not really like a jump shot. So I love that for Ja Morant, that he kind of has an unstoppable move that he can go to when games are getting tight, when his team needs a bucket. So I'm a huge believer in Ja Morant. And you can ask anybody this. I don't want nobody to think that I'm just saying this because I'm making a Grizzlies video, but I'm a huge believer in Ja Morant. But nonetheless, whenever you can have somebody like him playing just 28 minutes per game and you're sitting in second place in a very talented Western Conference, I think it says a lot about the depth. It says a lot about the coaching, and then also a lot about your front office, because they're doing a good job right now of playing some great basketball while they're whipping their players back into basketball shape. So I'm loving the Memphis Grizzlies right now, and it's crazy. We're definitely witnessing the shift. We're definitely witnessing a shift in the NBA right now, or at least in the Western Conference. We're seeing the younger teams in the league become sitting at the top of the standings. When we look at the Western Conference, the top 3 teams right now is the Houston Rockets, an extremely young team, the Memphis Grizzlies, another young team, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I believe once again are the youngest team in the NBA. So this is pretty cool, and those 3 teams that we just named, I actually really enjoy watching those teams a lot. And maybe the NBA, instead of the NBA still love to produce the older teams when it comes to those TV games. Maybe they need to start shining the light on some of these younger teams, because they truly are fun to watch. But that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys today. The depth on the Memphis Grizzlies, I think, has been so impressive so far this season. They've had so many guys step up. Jake LaRavia has been big time. Scottie Pippen Jr. has been big time. Santi Aldama as a starter coming off the bench. He really doesn't care. He gets the job done. He's been shooting. I think he's had 12 straight games now where he's made a 3-pointer. Brandon Clark has been amazing. So Jalen Wells, once again, so many different role players has been valuable for the Memphis Grizzlies so far this season. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.